Now let's bring in retired Air Force intelligence officer Jake Sotiriadis. He's also a national security strategist and Hudson Institute senior fellow Rebecca Heinrichs. Great to have you both on this very important day. So largely negotiated, Rebecca, is what we're hearing. What are you thinking at this critical stage? Well,
I think it's really important to take in mind what President Trump did this morning, which is he pumped the brakes on the whole thing. He said, we're not going to rush forward. So that means that, if there was a deal to be signed yesterday, like that was kind of the flurry of the media reporting that there may be a deal yesterday, President Trump is not satisfied with it at this point. I'm also hearing from sources close to have a better picture of what's going on with the deal. A couple of things that just corroborate what reporting just had for Fox, which is that any kind of removal of the blockade that the United States would be willing to do must be in response to the Iranians demonstrating that the strait is open. So this is not going to be based on promises of the Iranians. They actually have to show that they're not going to allow these IRGC militia to fire into the strait. And the United States is not going to be removing any single U.S. forces that are in the region. So, the United States is still ready to resume military operations if the Iranians do not comply with their aspect of the deal. And then, of course, we have this question about what the Iranians have even agreed to on the nuclear question. That's very important to President Trump. We don't have any clarity on that point at all, Mike.
Jake, what is your reaction to what we've learned, and what are you most watching for at this stage?
Mike, I think for where we look at things developing right now, you notice the narrative has changed since the beginning of combat operations 3 months ago, where the narrative coming out of the administration and what we were looking at was weakening Iran's military and, of course, preventing Iran from ever getting a nuclear weapon. Now, of course, the Iranians have switched things by closing the Strait of Hormuz, and the immediate priority is opening up the Strait of Hormuz because that's exerting all this economic pressure not only on the United States but also on the global economy. So the devil is going to be in the details. I'm not convinced we are very, very close to a comprehensive deal. What we're talking about at this stage would be for about a 60-day period of trying to open up the strait and get to some areas of agreement. But at the end of the day, my biggest concern is that we opened up these combat operations 3 months ago. The Iranian regime is still going to be left in power. So we may have a tactical victory or some sort of composite deal now that gets us to temporary economic relief. We're going to have to revisit this issue in 2, 3, 4, 5 years because the same players, the same extremists in Tehran are going to be in power.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's talking about reopening the Strait of Hormuz. He's also talking about preparations for final negotiations on the nuclear issue. How critical are those talks?
Well, this is really the whole ballgame. The whole point, and President Trump has said over and over again, that this terrorist regime cannot have a nuclear weapon. And I have said from the beginning that means that the Supreme Leader, Junior, who is supposedly still alive, cannot be the one that ultimately calls the shots because he's still committed to the Islamic Revolution. And so we're still at the sticking point about who is even calling the shots in Iran. There's been some significant concern expressed by the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, Ted Cruz. These are individuals who support President Trump's agenda. They've supported President Trump's really bold decision to go in for Operation Midnight Hammer and an Epic Fury. And they're very concerned that we still don't know who is negotiating inside the Iran regime. We can't trust him. But we certainly can't relieve sanctions until we actually have all of the requirements met for American security.
And, Jake, it sounds like you're taking a cautious approach until we see the fine print on the deal.
Absolutely. I think the devil is going to be in the details, and certainly this deal will be no exception to that. Clearly, we need to open up the Strait of Hormuz. That's the immediate priority. It seems that we're going to table the nuclear file for a little bit, build some flexibility into that for negotiation space on both sides of this issue. But ultimately, we're going to have to come to some resolution on the enriched uranium in Iran, because, again, I think a lot of people are asking themselves, are we better off now than we were at the beginning of combat operations? If whatever deal results in the Iranians still even controlling some sort of aspect of the strait and not resolving the nuclear issue, we're going to have a lot of questions and the verdict will still be out.
Jake, Rebecca, thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.